4 ITV companies are to lose their licence to broadcast. Carlton Television will take over from Thames and 1,000 jobs will be lost. TVAM will go. Its boss calls it a black day for British broadcasting. And nearly 100 more hospitals and health units will opt out of local health authority control. Good evening. The auction of commercial television licences has produced the biggest shake-up in ITV's history. The biggest company, Thames, the most profitable company, TVAM, and the companies serving the wealthiest region, TVS, will all stop broadcasting at the end of next year, and their licences will be handed to newcomers. The Independent Television Commission judged the bids on the basis of the money offered and the quality of the programmes. The decision by the Commission means 4 changes in the ITV network. The national breakfast channel, TVAM, has lost its licence despite being the most popular of the early morning shows. It was outbid by Sunrise, a consortium including London Weekend Television and The Guardian newspaper. Thames TV, the biggest ITV company which makes Minder and The Bill, has lost its London weekday licence to Carlton Television, a major production company which bid more. In the south of England, TVS put in the highest bid, but the Commission decided they couldn't afford it and awarded the licence to Meridian Broadcasting. The same happened in the southwest. The holders there, TSW, bid highest, but lost out to West Country TV. The ITC has given licences to 3 existing companies, even though they made lower bids. That means Granada retains its licence for the North West, as does London Weekend Television, which makes Blind Date and the South Bank Show, and Grampian in North East Scotland. Another 6 companies retained their licences as the highest bidders in their regions. They're Tyne Tees, Ulster, Yorkshire, HTV, Anglia and Channel TV. 3 licences were uncontested, and so Scottish TV, Border and Central will stay in business.
The champagne was out at Britain's newest and largest ITV company. Carlton Television's bid more than £43 million a year to oust Thames Television.
Well, naturally, we're very pleased at the result. We felt that we had put forward a very high-quality application, and we're looking forward to the challenge of building a new broadcasting service for London for the 90s.
Carlton's the brainchild of one of Britain's richest men. Michael Green made his fortune supplying television companies with high-tech equipment and programmes, like Inspector Morse.
Go on, Lewis.
We're here to arrest you, sir, for the murder of John Mitchell.
Thames Television has lost the fight to keep its franchise. 1,000 jobs are to go as the company switches to independent production.
Thames staff were devastated.
We bid the maximum amount of money that we felt that licence, the London weekday licence, was worth to Thames Television, bearing in mind the very bumpy ride that Channel 3, the new ITV, is going to have during the next 10 years.
Thames will now slim down to become just an independent producer. Unions blame government resentment of Thames's outspoken current affairs programmes for the legislation which sealed the company's fate.
Well, we're appalled. We think that in large part it's due to a vindictive piece of legislation passed by this government following the excellent Thames Television programme Death on the Rock.
The highest bid for Thames's licence came from Richard Branson, head of Virgin, but his programme plans weren't thought good enough. He, like other losers, may now ask the courts to review the Independent Television Commission's decision.
Well, we obviously think that the ITC are wrong, and it's going to be a long, laborious process, but we have decided that because we genuinely feel they're wrong, that we are going to go to the courts.
The Commission had to give licences to the highest bidders, provided their programmes were of high enough quality and they hadn't bid more than they could afford. It's clear the Commission used its discretion to the full to weed out bidders who didn't come up to scratch. Today, the Commission said less money than had once been feared would be leaving ITV for the Treasury.
The programme makers of the 15 Channel 3 network companies will have nearly the same money to work to as under the current levy system.
2 ITV companies lost because they bid too much. Southampton-based TVS bid £59 million, but the licence went to Meridian Broadcasting, backed by Labour peer Lord Hollick, another self-made millionaire. And TSW's managing director had to break the news to his staff that their £16 million bid had been ruled too high as well.
We made the highest bid because those were the rules, and we've lost.
The whole thing is like Alice in Wonderland. We're deeply disappointed, and I'm most of all disappointed for the people in this company who worked so hard during this last difficult 18 months.
Brookside producer Phil Redmond was also angry. He bid 4 times more than Granada Television, but was rejected on quality grounds. Granada was celebrating. Their £9 million bid means Coronation Street will stay on ITV, and they'll have plenty of money to spend on new programmes. The system has created anomalies. Some of the richer companies will end up paying much less than some of the poorer. Central Television bid just £2,000 a year for a region with advertising revenue of more than £230 million. Meridian bid more than £36 million for a region with an income of nearly £200 million. Yet LWT's bid less than £8 million. Its income will also be around £200 million. Amid the celebrations at London Weekend, there was criticism for a system which resulted in London rival Thames, a widely admired linchpin of the ITV network, losing out.
A lot of MPs who voted for this, particularly Conservative MPs, who now want to disown it, should actually be held to account. This was a daft system.
After all the upheaval, the ITC hopes viewers will notice little difference. But the wide discrepancies in the bids means the ITV network faces years of tension between rich companies and poor ones. And in 1994, the companies who've won today become liable to takeover, and a whole new form of bidding could begin again.
The company, which has held its licence since 1983, said its bid had been proper and sensible. Michael Sullivan reports.
There had been lingering hopes at TVAM that the company's franchise would be renewed, but it was not to be, and this morning Bruce Gingell, the company's chairman, emerged from his office with many of his staff shaken and resentful.
The £14 million bid was a proper and sensible bid given the exigencies of the business. I do not believe that Sunrise will be a profitable company. I predict that Sunrise will be bankrupt in 1994.
We did not deserve this. We deserved special consideration for our achievements. That has not happened, and I feel gutted.
5 well-known television faces went into the launching of TVAM. Robert Key, Angela Rippon, David Frost, Anna Ford and Michael Parkinson celebrated their first early morning broadcast in February 1983. But internal disagreements and financial difficulties were to set in a matter of weeks. Peter Jay resigned as chairman. A month later, Anna Ford was fired. So too was Angela Rippon, both for airing their grievances in public. Financial and management crises dogged TVAM for several years. It challenged the unions and locked out many of its staff in the process. But as 1991 arrived, it was able to claim financial stability and an established place in the risky business of commercial early morning television. That was not enough to save it. At their victory press conference today, the principals of the new franchise holders outlined their plans for 1993.
The sort of style we were looking for was warmth with authority, and in the bid document we did actually describe a sort of set which would be come to our table sort of set. Not a desk and not a sofa, but something in the middle.
But David Frost, one of TVAM's founders, expressed the bitterness of the losers.
I remember that when I was at school, I was always told that the important thing is not the winning, but it's the taking part. I didn't believe it then, and I don't believe it now.
Many of the stations which lost their licences will become independent producers, hoping to sell their shows to other broadcasters. Programmes such as Thames Television's The Bill and Minder could be bought by the new companies, satellite channels, or even the BBC.
When commercial television started in 1954, it was described as a licence to print money, a reputation which has dogged the industry ever since. Mrs Thatcher decided the restrictive working practices and overmanning, for which ITV became notorious, had to end, and she came up with her franchise system. A radical shake-up of independent television had been urged in the Peacock report 5 years ago. Leaner, more efficient companies producing good quality programmes were supposed to emerge. It hasn't entirely gone to plan. Nobody envisaged Central TV would retain its franchise for a cash bid of a mere £2,000 a year. But today, Central was unapologetic.
Some people believe that we were lucky to be unopposed. Some people believe that we were clever to be unopposed. And I don't think it's for me to make the judgment. I think it must be for others who understand the system to decide whether we were just lucky or clever. I don't mind. I think it's results that count.
Central and other companies which submitted low bids hope to maintain their range of programmes. But the question is whether others amongst today's winners with high bids can keep their promises. In the short term, viewers will be most concerned about the fate of popular shows like TVS's Ruth Rendell Mysteries and Thames Television's The Bill. They'll be sold to whoever wants them, including possibly the BBC.
There aren't very many programmes that exist that I would want. There may be one or two. My main interest will be in new programmes from new suppliers. People who in the past have not been able to make programmes for us will now be able to make programmes for us, and I hope they will offer their best work to us.
Many of the independent producers welcome today's changes, which will bring them commissions from the new franchise holders. But they'll be looking for guaranteed successes.
They'll be wanting successful programmes. They'll be wanting programmes that get high audience figures. And I think that what that will mean is that if a programme doesn't perform immediately, it won't get a second chance. It'll be much more like America, where if a programme doesn't get the right audience, it gets taken off.
All current ITV companies will retain their licences till December 1992. So the next 14 months will be a testing time for winners and losers.
4 ITV companies have lost their licences in the franchise auction held by the Independent Television Commission. Thames, TVAM, TVS and TSW will be replaced by rival operators when the new Channel 3 network begins broadcasting in 1993. The licence applicants, 40 in all, had to pass a quality threshold after submitting their cash bids. Both TVS and TSW were the highest bidders in their areas, and they are among several losing groups considering legal action against the ITC's decision. These are the main changes. In London, Thames TV was outbid for the weekday franchise by Carlton. TVAM lost the breakfast TV franchise to the Sunrise Consortium. TVS in the southeast of England will be replaced by Meridian, and TSW in the southwest will give way to West Country Television. Our Home Affairs correspondent Robert Parker looks at today's winners and losers and what the auction will mean for British television.
Today's announcement by the Independent Television Commission in Knightsbridge brings to an end one of the longest-running cliffhangers in the history of television. A situation created by the Broadcasting Act of 1990, which suggested that the 16 ITV franchises would no longer be awarded to those companies deemed to be the best, but to those who bid the highest price, providing certain quality thresholds had been met. In the event when the decisions arrived by fax at television offices around the country at 10 o'clock this morning, it became clear that for the most part, quality considerations had shone through, and that the highest bid was not the only factor. Indeed, 8 out of the 16 winners got their franchises with lower bids than their rivals. There were 16 franchises up for grabs, including the breakfast licence. The ITC has made 4 major changes to the existing structure. Thames Television, which for the last 23 years has run the London weekday service, is to be replaced by Carlton Television, which will commission outsiders to make all its programmes except news and will employ 1,000 fewer staff than Thames. TVS, which has operated ITV in the southeast, has lost its franchise to Meridian, even though Meridian put in a bid substantially lower. In the West Country, TSW lost its licence to the West Country TV Consortium, again, even though TSW bid twice as much. TVAM, which makes ITV's breakfast show, is to be replaced by Sunrise TV, which of the 3 competitors put in the highest bid at £34,610,000. Granada Television held on to its franchise, even though North West Television, which makes Brookside, bid 4 times as much and was thought to have a strong chance. Perhaps the biggest upset involved the displacement of Thames Television. The company which built its reputation with programmes like Minder is the single richest ITV area. It employed 1,300 people, 1,000 of whom have today been told they'll lose their jobs. It now plans to become an independent programme maker.
I'm devastated on behalf of those production staff. They have worked very hard indeed for the London region and indeed for the whole network. They've carried a very heavy load on behalf of ITV. which is the #1 most popular channel in this country, principally because of Thames programmes, which are almost half the autumn schedule's successes.
Thames will be replaced by Carlton Television. Carlton has already been involved in television facilities and production at a high level.
Go on, Lewis!
The makers of the highly successful Inspector Morse, Carlton thinks that it can devote more money to programme making by getting rid of expensive studio complexes.
We are confident that we can do that. We think that our operating costs will be lower. We are confident that we will have adequate funding available for programming and run a profitable business.
The only franchise that appears to have been won solely as a result of the price is the one held by TV-AM. Of the 3 bids, Sunrise's £34,600,000 beat Daybreak's bid by £1,250,000. TV-AM itself only offered £14.25 million, all that it thinks breakfast television can support.
I do not believe that Sunrise will be a profitable company. I predict that Sunrise will be bankrupt in 1994. It's an extraordinary decision.
The experience of TVS, losing despite its much higher bid, is just one of several financial curiosities thrown up by the new bidding system. And the poker-like gamble that was involved in the process is illustrated by the huge variations in bids submitted for rather similar areas. Of the 5 most profitable existing TV franchise areas, London Weekday went for £43 million, while the second richest franchise in the Midlands was kept by Central for a token £2,000 a year, though they will have to pay a proportion of their annual advertising revenue as well. The London Weekend franchise was held by LWT for just £7.5 million, while the South Eastern region went for £34 million. Granada in the northwest hung on to their franchise for £9 million, a bargain compared to what some of the other franchise areas cost. And in his statement this morning, ITC Chairman George Russell referred to how big a gamble Central Television had taken by bidding only £2,000.
Given the fact that he was able and had the nerve to take that risk, he should probably also be given the £1 million and fired the next day as well. It's very risky.
Originally, the then Prime Minister, Mrs Thatcher, had intended in the government's broadcasting white paper that the ITV franchises should be decided solely on the basis of the largest bid. But today's decision underlies just how much George Russell and the ITC have quietly managed to get the idea of quality built back into the decision-making process, something that Russell himself today acknowledged.
What has happened, we've taken a stand, a very strong stand for the last 3 years. I'd like to think that at the end of the day, we'll be able to say that what has come, and it's a belief, that I think quality has won on this occasion, and viewers will win.
But some of the people who lost, like Phil Redmond of Northwest Television and Richard Branson, who had bids in for 3 franchises, are now considering legal action, because they feel that by making the highest bid, they should have won. Similar actions are being contemplated by TVS and TSW.
Our financial bid was slightly better than Carlton's, and therefore we feel that the ITC should have actually given us the licence and not Carlton.
We made the highest bid by far of all 3 applicants, so we were confident of our business plan. I shall certainly be talking to my colleagues at the board to consider our next action, which may well involve legal resource.
But the future that ITV companies like LWT were celebrating tonight with champagne is an uncertain one. For from 1993, the national network of programmes will be decided on by a new figure in television called the Central Scheduler. The ITV companies like LWT will have no guaranteed access to the national network as they've had in the past. And in Europe, other television groupings are looking hungrily at Britain, now that what they regard as the crazy franchise system is out of the way.
And as the Independent Television Commission revealed who they'd favoured with franchises to broadcast for the next 20 years. Within a couple of hours of the announcement, the cheers, tears, bottles of champagne and commiserative backslapping had given way to threats of legal action. The rules of the game seemed clear enough, but at least 2 of the 4 companies which lost their licences and one of the unsuccessful bidders feel so hard done by they're considering applying for judicial review. At 10 o'clock this morning, Bet Lynch, Ken Barlow and Percy Sugden knew they were safe. Granada had kept its franchise, and so had 12 out of 16 of the other franchise holders. There were 40 consortia fighting for the spoils. To no one's surprise but their own, TVAM lost the licence for national breakfast programming to something called Sunrise TV. The other losers were concentrated in the south of England. TSW went down to West Country TV, TVS lost out to Meridian, and ITV's biggest company, Thames, was defeated by Carlton Television. No one survives long in the television jungle without acquiring a thick skin. Among the losers, some were lining up to announce they were taking legal action or advice, others warning their successful overbidders would soon be bust.
What can you tell us about the bid, the £14 million bid, sir? The £14 million bid was a proper and sensible bid given the exigencies of the business. I do not believe that Sunrise will be a profitable company. I predict that Sunrise will be bankrupt in 1994.
What happens to your staff?
Today's carve-up is a direct consequence of Mrs. Thatcher, who regarded the ITV companies as the last bastion of restrictive practices.
Action.
The idea was to use the market to slash costs, cut down on overmanning, and in the process give the Treasury a new cash cow. Certainly, in the run-up to the auction, costs were cut and staff levels cut too. The ITV companies have shed 40% of their workforce since the mid-80s. In May this year, the industry's leading players turned up at the Independent Television Commission, appointed as auctioneer, to hand in their bids. The companies had won some concessions, and quality criteria had been introduced which softened the original free market proposal. But it was a very unusual sort of auction. Each candidate had to hand in a sealed envelope containing their cash bid. Then came the quality hurdle. Before the ITC looked at the money, detailed business plans were scrutinised. Companies were excluded if their programmes looked poor or if their finances weren't up to scratch. In theory, those that survived were competing on the size of their bids. The ITC subjected them to one final test for what it called exceptional circumstances, but it seems to have found none. The highest bidders left in the game won the franchises.
First,
by excluding so many high bids at the quality hurdle, the ITC has moved the auction a long way from a pure market affair. They've also greatly reduced the amount of money the Treasury will be getting out of the auction.
Had the ITC been required to award each licence to the highest bidder, irrespective of whether he passed the quality threshold, the total tender yield per annum would have been almost £100 million higher than it will be under the awards we've made.
As a result of all this, the auction has thrown up some strange anomalies. Central managed to win the second most valuable franchise with a bid of only £2,000, whereas TVS lost their less valuable franchise despite a huge, nearly £60 million bid. One of the biggest rows has blown up in the Granada region. They've successfully retained their franchise with a bid of £9 million. But that's upset their rivals, Northwest TV, led by Brookside's creator Phil Redmond. With a strong programme-making record, the backing of 2 other successful regional TV companies, and a bid well above Granada's, they're outraged. Well, earlier I asked the chairman of Granada, David Plowright, whether it wasn't rather an odd system which rewards a bidder who hasn't paid the market rate.
I can't say that this system is the better way that Lord Thompson sought, and I don't think you would find many who would take that view. But it developed into a hybrid, if you remember, from the rather free market approach, and I think many of us are very grateful that the quality considerations were introduced into the bill. I shudder to think what have happened if they were not.
But isn't it the case that the real reason you could afford to bid only £9 million as against £35 million from your competitors was that you knew in the end the ITC would look after you because you were part of the old television establishment?
No, I wouldn't take that view. I think that we took seriously the invitation to apply. We did our best to forecast the revenue of 10 years, and we knew the cost of programmes and the quality of the service that I think they were seeking. And remember, it is a regional contract, and I think companies that make a commitment to the region, which expresses itself on the screen, but also has something to do with your contribution to the cultural and social life in the area, plays some part.
But Phil Redmond's company was offering about 4 times as much regional programming as you.
Yes, I've never taken the view that volume is necessarily better than quality. And we have applied to our regional programmes the same production values that we apply to our network programmes.
But the whole principle behind this shake-up initially was that it was going to bring in, first of all, be determined by the market, that's gone by the board, and secondly, that it was going to bring in new blood. That hasn't happened in your case at all, has it?
There's only about me left from the last contract round. There's a great deal of new blood in Granada, a lot of energetic young programme makers who have demonstrated their ability over the last 5 years to make programmes that appeal to the public, appeal to the advertiser, and indeed also to make programmes that meet those requirements of a service looking for quality, range and diversity, which I've said before are the new words for information, education and entertainment.
Well, joining us now is Phil Redmond of the unsuccessful bidders for that franchise that Granada retained. The ITC obviously thought your ideas were pretty second-rate.
Well, I think that's one of the things that we've left us a bit bewildered today, because if Yorkshire Television's judgment was good enough to pass the quality in their own region, and if Tyne-T's judgment was good enough to pass the quality in their region, it seems odd that the combination of Yorkshire Television, Tyne-T's television, myself and Mersey Television didn't actually meet the so-called quality test in the Northwest, and we're still trying to find a reason as to how any rational body could have come to that decision.
Are you really dissatisfied with the principle that there was a quality hurdle, or the way in which the quality hurdle was implemented?
Excuse me. I think the big problem is we don't quite understand what's happened with the ITC's interpretation of the whole system. When I came on this programme shortly after the bill was published, and was a great supporter of the principles of the bill. And you've touched on them yourself, and that was to bring new blood, new ideas, but also another important principle, and that was to get out the excess cash out of the bloated ITV system. And I think it's worth sort of just taking ourselves back to the previous item in the programme. It's quite sobering to sit here and to be talking about what is, after all, only television. Actually, nobody is going to die from these decisions today. But it seems a bit sort of odd to watch the ITC seeming to relish the fact that they've deprived the Treasury of something like £200 million. And that £200 million could have actually been better spent in health and education. And if we wanted to keep it into television, it could have actually given Channel 4 a much more secure funding base for the future. These are the kind of strange decisions that have come out today that we're still wrestling with.
But between that original proposition and today's announced decision, the goalposts moved, didn't they?
Well, other people throughout the day have said the goalposts have moved, and I think towards the end of the day, it might be that I'm getting tired now, but I think I'm beginning to come round to that view myself, really.
Phil Redmond, thank you.